Just kidding. But anyway, hope everyone had a good, safe time last night. How many of you stayed up till midnight last night? I was in bed by 12. The only reason I stayed up probably with some of you all is I was watching the football game. But for 2 hours, I was like, I wish I was in bed. But I stayed up and I was in bed by 12:06. So, and Cheryl usually goes to bed at 9 o'clock. She was even up, and she blamed me for her being up.
Well, if it was Ohio State, it was kind of disappointing.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I stayed up for that. But,
They played good.
yeah, it was a good game. But anyway, hopefully, I don't know how your 2022 was. It was had some ups and downs like most years, but hopefully, as we face a new year, you can continue to find hope and purpose in the coming year. And you know, our lives are always goes through periods, or goes through. Someone told me one time, you know, you're either going into a problem, coming out of a problem, or in the middle of a problem. So, but you know, we're going to face good times and bad times. I mean, that's just life. But hopefully, regardless of what we're going through, we draw our strength and courage and compassion and comfort from God in this coming year. But last year, I did this sermon for the first time, and it was received very well. And a few people even said, you ought to do that every year. So I wanted to do it again. That's a State of the Church message. Now, last year's was really long. It was like 45-minute sermon. So it's not going to be that long this year. I was like, I better cut some of this out. But that's what happens. I have notes, an outline of my sermon, but I have a tendency to get off my notes. I had a preacher friend of mine who told me one time, he said, if I use my notes, I preach 30 minutes. If I get off my notes, I preach 50 minutes. Because the ad-libs a lot. But anyway, I think it's important for us to, you know, we're used to these types of things where, you know, we have a State of the State address with the governor, we have a State of the Union address with the president, and so it's basically just a time to look at where we've come from, what we've accomplished, what we've been through, and then to have some challenges or goals for the upcoming year. And so I think it's good for the church to do that. Now, I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to be real with you guys, with the good and the bad. I think there's more good than there's bad, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell the truth and preach the truth. So, but anyway, I'm going to look. If you look in your bulletin, there's 3 points I'm going to talk about today. First of all, I'm going to talk about the state of the church by the numbers, and then I'm going to talk about the state of the church reality, being real with one another, and then I'm going to look at the state of our membership and members, and give you all some challenges for the upcoming year. But before I get into that, I did want to share some scripture with you. I always forget to turn this thing on. All right. First, we're going to look at the numbers. And you don't even have to take your shoes off for this. I'm going to do the numbers for you. But anyway, it's often joked that preachers like numbers, or even preachers embellish numbers. Like, you know, we're counting pregnant women as 2, and we're counting the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit in our attendance today, and it goes on and on. And numbers can mean different things, but I do know that numbers were important in the Bible. Numbers had significance in the Old Testament and the New Testament, and it was important. And ironically, a book named Numbers, which is all about numbers, we see at the beginning of that, and obviously this is one of the books that Moses wrote, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, the first 5 books of the Bible, or what the Hebrews called Torah. This book was more about the numbers of the Israelites. And it says in verses 1 through 3, the Lord spoke to Moses in the tent of meeting in the desert of Sinai on the first day of the 2nd month of the 2nd year. Aren't you glad we don't do that anymore? Like, this is the 2000 year, the 23rd year. You know, made it a little bit similar. But anyway, the Bible is like the second month of the second year after the Israelites came out of Egypt. He said, take a census of the whole Israelite community by their clans and families, listing every man by name, one by one. You and Aaron are to count according to their divisions all the men in Israel who are 21 years old or more and able to serve in the army. And so God wanted Moses to take a census and know how many people they had. And it's really no different than what we saw during the Christmas season when we talked about the birth of Jesus. Why was Mary and Joseph going to Bethlehem? For a census. You know, they wanted to have a count of everybody, so they all had to go back to their own tribes and areas where they were from. So numbers are important in that sense. We take a census in this country. Is it every 10 years?
Yeah.
You know why the government does that? So they know who to tax, who to get money from. But anyway, we take census regularly, fairly often in our country as well. But the point of that is to just to kind of know how many people we have. And so, yeah, we do take attendance every week at this church. And numbers can tell you something, but they also fluctuate. But I wanted to give you a little bit of our numbers here at this church. Our average attendance this year, overall, through 12 months, we averaged 60 in attendance, which last year we averaged 51. So our attendance went up nine people. It was 60.4 or something like that. But anyway, overall the average was 60. So that is good. We can look at, hey, our attendances went up on average. The highest attendance we had was on Easter, which was 76. And the lowest attendance we had, ironically, was last week on Christmas Day. Now, a mix of Christmas Day and icy, cold, frigid temperatures, but we still had 36 last week. So thanks a lot. You made our average go down just a little bit. But overall, that's still pretty good. Now, believe it or not, we had 7 months out of 12 that we averaged 60 or greater, which is pretty impressive. That we had that many months where we averaged 60, 61, 60, whatever it was. And out of one of those 7 months, we averaged 70. We had 1 month this year where we averaged 70. We had a really good month. I don't know why that month was so great, but anyway. Huh? Yes, yeah, it was that. I think it was that month. I think it was that month I was off, and there was guest speakers. I think you're right. So anyway, I said 51. Our average attendance last year was 52. Sorry about that. But anyway, so that tells us a little bit. It means we're going up. It's not good if we're going down this way. So anyway, I thought that was good news. As far as membership, we had 3 new members in 2022. We had 1 by transfer and 2 by baptism. But we also lost 3 members to death this year. So we gained 3 people but lost 3 people as far as that goes. Now, I know we all like to talk about money, but now, this is probably not accurate, and I know Raymond or Lisa, I don't know if y'all know off the top of your head, I'll put you on the spot, but when I looked at our last report, earlier this month, we had $83,687 in the bank, and that's our checking and our savings. But I'll keep you in mind, every month, we always put a financial statement out there. It's either on the table or the Welcome Center, so you can always see where our money goes. But, you know, we did very well financially this year again. A lot, like I said last year, a lot of churches struggled during that COVID year. Their offerings went down, but you all did a very good job. But you kept sending, you kept giving, and so we didn't suffer in that way. We were blessed to be well financially, and we are again this year, I think so. And we continue to give 10% of our giving to our missions we support. We have several missions we support. You can look out there in the lobby. It's posted on the bulletin boards, but there's also sheets at the table that show you the missions we support. And so we give 10% of that. And I asked Ron, I didn't put him on the spot, but I asked him if he could give me how much we gave to missions this year.
Roughly $11,000.
Okay. So we gave $11,000 to missions that year, and that's probably not counting like our special offerings we do. We're taking up this year. We take one up at Easter, and also we did some love offerings for when we had people in to sing, that sort of thing. So those, I believe, are what I would call above and beyond your normal giving, and so I think both attendance-wise and financially, the church is doing well. And so those are good things, or positives in our church. If churches start having problems, I know there's lots of reasons churches have problems, but typically if the attendance starts going down or the money, they start struggling financially, that opens the door to some problems, pointing fingers and blaming and that sort of thing.
There's an old saying that churches don't have financial problems, they have spiritual problems.
Yeah, yeah.
That's totally true.
And it's true because, and not to get in a sermon on giving, but here's the thing, when you give to this church, yeah, you're giving through Adena Road, but you're really giving to God. And, God wants us to get, everything we have, everything we've been blessed with is from God. God created this world and everything in it. So we're simply being obedient to giving back to Him. He's teaching us the discipline of giving to others. And so you're not giving directly to Adena Road. Yeah, God, we collect the offerings and we use it to do the church's business and ministry and missions and all that sort of thing. But, I've been in churches where somebody got mad, they like something, they say they stopped giving to the church. Like, they told me I'm not giving money to the church right now because I don't like we did this. And I would tell them, well, you're hurting yourself, you're not hurting the church. We're not going to close the doors because you're not giving your $10 a week. But the reality is, you're giving this to God. So when you say that I'm not going to support that church and give to that church, you're really hurting yourself because you're not giving to God. And so I hope nobody ever does that in this church. But your giving's between you and God. I don't know what you give. Only a couple people know what you give, and that's because they count the money and do that. So nobody knows what you give. But I hope. I feel like this church is very generous. Y'all have been very generous to me and Cheryl, and the gifts you've given us. You've been generous to other people. People are always generous when there's needs, and so that's a good thing. And so I think we're healthy in those regards. Now, just some accomplishments we completed this year. You notice we got new carpet all throughout the church. We got a new awning. It just literally got put up on Thursday. It's not fully complete. They got the awning up, but it's going to have rolling down sides on it so that you can put it down when weather is bad. It'll have plastic windows in it so you can see out, so any claustrophobic people. It's also going to have, we'll see Ron crawling in. I'm like, Ron, we got another door on the other side. But anyway, the other thing is it'll have lighting in it and all that sort of thing. So it looks even better than I thought it would. Anyway, that was something that we were able to do this year. We resealed the parking lot. We added some additional handicap spots because we've got several people that have a need for that. We did 3 clothing giveaways this year out of our clothing closet.
Hate to interrupt you, but I just want to say, we need to give a lot of thanks to Ron because the awning was put up by the second company.
Yeah.
We went to, and Ron struggled a lot this past year with one company that failed to perform, and having to get a refund from them, and having to get a new company and keep after them to get the work done. So, he needs a pat on the back for tenacity to help, and all the trustees do.
Yeah.
All the trustees help, but Ron especially spearheaded a lot of the effort on this. So, just want to make that clear.
Yeah. There you go, Ron. Yeah, Ron and a lot of people do a lot of things behind the scene, and we couldn't do the things we do without volunteers. Probably 95% or more of what happens in the church is from our members volunteering and serving. I'm the only guy that gets paid, so it's not like we're always paying people to do things. We do pay people to do some things, but the point is we rely on our volunteers. And we should have really had our awning last year, but we ran into problems with that happening, had to get a new company, and they were behind. Again, I think there was still some, people were still having trouble with what's it called, not distribution, but supply chain issues and stuff like that. But anyway, it's up. He told me it'd be up for the end of the year, and he fulfilled his promise, so it's good to see that. But anyway, we had the 3 clothing giveaways. We had our one-day VBS, which we hadn't had a VBS at this church in quite a while. And so it wasn't, I was a little disappointed in the attendance. We didn't have a lot of people, but all the adults had a really lot of fun. But the kids, we did have fun, and so it was really nice to be able to have an event like that. Hopefully we can continue that in the future. We did do a school supply and backpack giveaway that day. If I had to do this off my memory, and if I'm wrong, somebody let me know. But I think we gave away there was 51 backpacks altogether. And we gave away several that day, and some people took some more. And then what we had left over, Billy Kirk came and took them out to Huntington schools because there were some needs out there. So we were able to give away 51 backpacks this year. Also, in the past month or so, we added a blessing box out from our church, and people's been bringing in supplies. And gotta give Jesus credit for that. I don't know if you noticed, but that blessing box was an old pulpit that used to be in here. So he took that and turned that into a blessing box. And then Kendra was also, I don't think she's in here, but Kendra Ballou also helped in that project. I'm sure Carrie did. Anybody else? Jesus? Malachi? Anyway, which by the way, today's Jesus' birthday, right?
And I've seen several people taking advantage of the blessing boxes
Yeah.
too, so it is working.
Yeah, I usually use it on our way out. The other day, Kendra stopped to check out the door and said, "Hey, get out of there." But anyway, it's being used, and you can continue to spread the word about that. And there's actually a Blessing Box Facebook page that has a list of all. Probably ours is not on there, but anyway, it
I
has.
asked him to add it.
Okay, but it has a list of all of the locations that are throughout Chillicothe. So anyway, hopefully that'll be a great source of ministry. And then we got a new projector in the auditorium. That was more of a have to, because the other one died on us, and that thing was huge. I mean, y'all probably remember like the first VCR, the first microwave, floor models. I mean, everything used to be really huge. And one of the great things about technology is we learn how to make things better and smaller. So this one is like a fourth of the size of that one. But anyway, those are just some things we did as far as physical accomplishments. The board and trustees and deacons and elders, we have some more, there's more plans coming up in the year that we want to do and accomplish. This building was built in '68. It is 54 years old, and so just like anything that's old, if you don't keep it up, it's going to fall apart. And so we worked hard to try to update things, and not only that, I think when visitors and new people come, and even members, when you come in, it makes you feel a little bit better. I think especially members, we might take a little bit of pride in what we look like. And that sort of thing. And so anyway, more things to come, and so I'll share that next year, whatever we do next year. Another thing I want to mention is we got some new board members in 2023. And so, not to put anybody in the spot, but I'm going to. Our elders again this year are Steve Stanley and Raymond DeLong and Terry Ballou, who's back in the sound booth. If you know them guys, those are our elders for this year. And Ron Stiltner and Jack Davis are still our deacons, but we got two new deacons that are coming on board, and that's right here, Dave Peterson up front here, and Jesus Mitchell right here. Y'all sitting right at the front right there. So they're also, not only are they deacons, but they are going to be added as trustees as well. And then another new trustee is James Reitzel back there in the back as one of our new trustees. And then Jim Horsley got kicked off. I mean, he's stepping off from the trustees and taking a break. But anyway, oh yeah, sorry, thank you. He's not here today, I don't feel well. But Roger Downs also is coming on as a trustee as well. So I encourage you to pray for all of us as we strive to follow God's will and His vision and the things that He would have us do at this church. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But the next section I want to talk about is is reality. Sometimes we live in denial, or we live in a fantasy world. Sometimes we don't want to admit things are a certain way, or people don't want to admit they have problems, and I think it's important for us as a church to be real and to face reality. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit in this next section. I wanted us to look at Acts chapter 16 here. Acts chapter 16, verse 1 through 5, it is talking about Paul coming into Derbe. But beginning with verse 5, it says, Paul came to Derbe and then to Lystra, where a disciple named Timothy lived, whose mother was Jewish and a believer, but whose father was a Greek. The believers at Lystra and Iconium spoke well of him. Paul wanted to take him along on the journey, so he circumcised him because of the Jews who lived in that area, for they all knew that his father was a Greek. As they traveled from town to town, they delivered the decisions reached by the apostles and elders in Jerusalem for the people to obey. So the churches were strengthened in faith and grew daily in number. And the reason why I mention this is, the purpose of a church is to be strengthened in faith and to grow in numbers, but not also grow in numbers, but grow spiritually. I'm a firm believer if your members are growing spiritually, the numbers will automatically reflect that. And so a lot of churches that are dwindling and dying, and I blame some of that on poor leadership, or they're inward focused, or they're not reaching out, those sort of things. There's lots of reasons for that, but the ultimate thing is a lot of churches become stale and stagnant and just go through the motions, and so they're not being strengthened in their faith, and so that reflects in the numbers. I've already talked about numbers. But the reason why I share this is because, if Paul would come and visit us, I would want him to find us strengthened in faith and growing spiritually, individually, but also, our church growing. But the reality is, in this church, we talked about some new board members, but the reality is we need to develop future leaders. We need people out there to be future deacons and elders. And that just doesn't come overnight. Now, I know there's qualifications of elders and deacons that you'll find in 1 Timothy and Titus. So you have to be qualified to get in those positions. And part of that qualification is a desire to be in that position. However, people just don't wake up one day and say, hey, I want to be a deacon, or I want to be an elder. It's not, we're not running for county commissioner or city clerk or anything like that. It's not that type of thing. I believe being an elder and being a deacon is a calling. I believe, we have to be felt called to that. And part of that comes, it's a process. We have to grow into that. The Bible talks about not being a new convert, or someone like that that's a new Christian, being in leadership and that sort of thing. But the reason why I got this verse and wanted to share that is because that's what I want. I want our church to be strengthened in faith. I want us to grow spiritually and numerically. So I think part of the things that we need to do here is develop future leaders. I think that's something that we're missing, that we need to do. Me and Ron's talked about it quite a bit when he takes me out to lunch and buys my lunch. He does, so if you want somebody to buy your lunch, go out to lunch with Ron. But that's important, because as you see, some of our leaders are getting older. And so we need people to pick up the baton when it comes time for them to step aside or step away from that position. So it's important to have people that can step up. And so I think we need to have some future leader development. One thing you'll notice, I think, is a concern for me is we need younger families, younger adults and children in our church. When I look around this auditorium, we have a few kids downstairs, but there's big gaps, and we don't have a lot of teenagers, we don't have middle schoolers, we don't, that sort of thing. And I look out in the audience, there's a lot of gray hair out there. There's a lot of no hair out there, and so I'm not young anymore. Churches. One of the things that helps churches be healthy is having a balance. We need the older folks for wisdom, and typically your older folks are better givers and are the ones, the core of the church that serve. But the reality is, if we don't get younger families and kids and younger adults and families in here, this church is going to be in trouble, 5 years from now, or 10 years now. We have a lot of people in this church that are 80 or above, or 70s and above. And so that's a concern for me when you look out and say, where are we going to be in 5 years? Where are we going to be in 10 years if we don't get more people into our church and be more purposeful and direct about trying to focus and reach young families. And that don't mean we're ignoring older folks. And matter of fact, this is interesting to me that a lot of our growth that we've seen in this church and new members have been older folks. We're reaching people that are just older, which I think is unique because typically when churches reach new people, it's typically younger families or younger couples or whatever. But so I think me and you need to be more purposeful in that. I know we all have children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and nieces and nephews, and maybe they don't have a church home. And so I really want us to be proactive in looking for opportunities, neighbors or coworkers or classmates or whatever it is, to look for opportunities to either share our faith with somebody or invite them to church. And I get it, I get, if I was a young person with little kids, I'm an old person with little kids, so it's not the same, but if I was in my 30s and had little kids, I get looking for a church that had stuff for my family. I would want something for my children, and so I get that. And we do have things for children. We have a nursery, we have a junior church, and we have Sunday school. We have stuff for our kids. We're trying to do more for our kids. But we need more kids. And so, people are not just going to magically show up at our doorstep. I mean, that's just not going to happen. Now, we do live in a world where we use technology. We use Facebook and our website and things like that. People do find us there and come. But the ultimate evangelism is word of mouth. And that's us sharing our faith with someone, telling people about our church, inviting them to church, inviting them to whatever activities we have, or simply just sharing your testimony, your faith. And so I think we really need to see more of that because our church is getting older, and if we don't do something about it, it's going to be a problem in the near future. And so I want to encourage you to try to be active this year in that and trying to reach out to some younger families. You can talk to older people too. Don't leave them out, but I'm just saying overall, we hopefully can focus on getting some younger folks in here. To me, I think we need more people to volunteer and serve and use their talents. They always say 80 churches, 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. In our case, 20%, would be 10 or 12 people or whatever. And so I find that true in our church. Typically when we have things, there's a core group of people who are always here and always show up to do things. And that's great. It's great to have people committed like that, but it would be nice for some of those people to not have their plate so full sometimes, and to be balancing that. So I want to encourage you to find out what your gifts are if you don't know, or find places you can serve. And it can be something simple. You can learn how to do the sound booth. You can learn how, you can volunteer to help clean the church. You can show up for when we have things like the clothing giveaway or whatever. I mean, there's lots of ways that you can serve and volunteer. We always need people to work with the kids. And so there's lots of things that you can do, both in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. But I want to encourage you, if you're currently not serving and are able to serve, find a way to get plugged in. Volunteer when we have things. And so I do want to encourage you to do that. And again, I already talked about reaching out to young families and adults, but I think evangelism is important. And I want to encourage you to always look. It's a mindset and it's a discipline. You got to get practice, but I don't know about you, but I don't care if you're going to Kroger or Walmart or to a restaurant. Always try to remember that you represent Christ and His church, and always look for opportunities to plant a seed or water a seed. I don't know if you look at things that way, but if you start getting in the mindset of looking for opportunities to share your faith or be Jesus in the world or just something, you don't have to preach at people or anything, just being nice or kind or just simply doing those sort of things, I think can be important for us evangelizing. Several weeks ago, I got a haircut at a place, and I was telling the lady, she asked me what I did, and I told her I was a minister. She knew where our church was, and I just invited her to church. Hey, if you don't have a church, come by sometime. Which people expect a preacher to invite people to church, but I think it means more when it's other people. But the point is, just find opportunities to evangelize. Another thing, along with volunteering your time, I want to encourage you to give your time, talents, and treasures to the church. If you're not giving like you should, step up and give more. If you're not volunteering and serving more, do that. If you're a little wishy-washy and flaky when it comes to being faithful in your attendance and worship, try to step up in 2023 to be a little more consistent, be a little more faithful in your involvement in the church. Now, church attendance doesn't save you. You can come here every day of the week. It's not going to get you into heaven. You have to have a relationship with Jesus. However, I do believe church attendance and involvement keeps you saved. It'll help you grow in your faith and be involved. And so don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but I do think it's important to be here and to worship and to serve. But the idea of that is for fellowship and for learning and for growth. And most importantly, we're here to worship. The songs we sing, the communion, even the sermon, this is all part of, worship, giving our worship to God. And so we always need to keep that in mind. The third thing I want to close with, or I want to finish, before I get to the third thing, the third thing I want to talk about is members and our membership, the state of our membership. What does being a member of Adena Road Church of Christ mean? Well, in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 2, Paul said, "Now it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful." Well, if you're a member of this church, then you have been given a trust. If you're a member of this church, you should be a faithful attender. You should be a faithful giver. You should be a faithful server. You should be giving back to God through a variety of ways. You won't find any, we're not like a gym membership. We buy a gym membership and then we pay it every month, but we don't ever go to the gym. Planet Fitness is probably not going to call you and say, "We're going to have to shut our doors if you don't come by." We really need to. Honestly, a lot of these companies, that's how they really make their money, is by people who don't come to the gym. We're not that type of organization. We're a type of organization that, and we're really not an organization as much as we are a living organism. We're the body of Christ, and so we're more than just an organization. We're a living organism that relies on its body parts and its members, and so we do rely on those things. We couldn't do the things that we do. This church wouldn't be able to have a full-time preacher. We wouldn't be able to have services every week. We wouldn't be able to do some of the ministry and things I mentioned if it wasn't for you all giving and serving. And so that's important. And so I want to challenge you. And I hope if there's somebody not here today, we're recording this service, make sure they watch this sermon. Make sure they watch the sermon video. You can remind them that we have that. Because I wish everybody that was a member of this church was here today to hear this message. But because I want to encourage you to, set goals for yourself. Hey, I gave